Team, welcome back. I just wrapped up an awesome podcast with Jeff Lamb, our newest coach here at Coastal in the Process. He has a pretty epic story. Guy who grew up in Canada, he joined the military, served in Afghanistan, joined the fire department, and all that time was coaching in the background. And now, at the age of 40, is now pursuing his next chapter of life as a coach here at Coastal Fitness. I think you're going to love this one. Jeff, welcome to the podcast.
Hey Ed, good to be here. Thank you for having me.
How are you doing today?
I'm really good. Yeah, I'm really good. As we talked about earlier, I was just overcoming a bout of food poisoning, so I'm not through that anymore. So I'm pretty good.
Jeff, you're going to give us the express introduction of who Jeff Lamb is and why he's sitting with us here today.
Okay, so you want me to do that?
Okay. Absolutely. The mic is yours.
Yeah, the express version. Okay, so I'm sure we'll open up the can of worms in a little bit here, but so name's Jeff. I'm a brand new addition to your gym, your organization, Coastal Fitness. I'm from Canada originally, and I'm here to obviously join your team here. But aside from which, I'm here to tend to some family business, as we talked about. My grandma's a little bit unwell, so I've decided to come over to this side of the world to help her out a little bit. A little bit about myself, in the way of training and athletics, I've kind of been athletic my whole life, pursuing different kind of sports, been immersed in it since I was probably like 6 or 7. My parents were very, very adamant about getting me into athletics early on. Since then, that kind of like philosophy has kind of carried me throughout my life. In my professional career, we'll talk about that a little bit more, whether it's the military or the fire department. I ended up pursuing these professions in these spaces because I think there's a component of it that I am good at. I know that I'm good at, which is athletics, right? Aside from that, like personally, I think I just have a lot of passion for fitness, sport, and wellness, especially now that I'm a little bit older. I think wellness and longevity is super important to me, and I really want to share that with people. I want to share that with the community here at Coastal, of course, and I want to kind of take my experiences, all good and bad, and kind of, crystallize it, and hopefully be able to deliver to people a message that is about pursuing fitness and health in a meaningful kind of way. So that's the start to who Jeff Lamb is.
What's brought you to this point now with your philosophy on training in terms of how you want to help others? I'm interested to hear like your training journey. So you've always said sport's been a big part of your life, athletics, your methodology in terms of your own training has evolved over the years. You're at this point now. How old are you now, Jeff?
I'm 40.
So at 40, where you're now maybe what you resonate with in terms of your fitness has changed a little bit. Take me as far back as you want to go. But talk me through this like evolution of Jeff's athletic journey.
I think so. My athletic journey, to be honest, started off in a kind of like not such a good place, to be honest. I was, a pretty like bright kid, as my mom would describe it, but I was actually like, I don't know what the word would be called, but it's like a clinical definition of like shyness. It's like diffident or something along those lines, right? And
so this is this is something you get diagnosed with.
Yeah, like as an example, this is embarrassing to say, to share in public, but like I had a real hard time with the first day of school. Like I wouldn't let go of my mom's hand. Like my mom would like try these like creative ways of like distracting me. I'm like, hey, look, play with that, and like try to sneak out or whatever. And I would always catch her and cry and whatever.
And is this something you remember, or is this something that your mum has reminded you about?
No, I remember it.
Like how far back are we talking? We're talking like 3 years old, 4 years old?
Yeah,
wow, you can remember that?
I don't think it's like one of these good memories, but it's
like a trauma that is kind of still with you.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So with that being said, what my parents kind of tried different methods to kind of address that. One of the things that seemed to work well was like sports, like organized moving, right? So whether that's like just getting me to kick a ball around with people or like play basketball or whatever, that's kind of like where the origination of my fitness journey started from, right? The irony of that is that I actually found a lot of passion in track and field, specifically sprinting, which is a solo sport. So it kind of didn't really work out the way that they wanted to, but It did help me overcome a little bit of my social anxiety and some of my shyness for sure. So that's kind of where I started off. In the way of like where my, fast forwarding that all the way to today, I would say that between then and now, what I've ascertained in the way of training methodologies, a lot of it came from, yes, a lot of I had a lot of great coaches, but I would say majority of it was actually from bad experiences, right? So a lot of like maybe stuff that, you would watch on YouTube or like, you know what I mean? Like that kind of like bad training methodology or
Where were your early sources of like inspiration and learning? Because I mean, when we were probably, I imagine we were getting into training at similar ages, and YouTube definitely wasn't a thing.
Sure.
So where were your go-to resources to like figure out what your workout was going to look like, for example?
Yeah, so that's a amazing question, right? Obviously, technology has afforded a lot of people all types of information. It doesn't necessarily, mean that it's going to be good. Where I first started my training was in track and field specifically, and I would say that the coach that I had was a very caring coach, but he was his methodologies were antiquated, right? In just the same way that maybe you and I would watch a YouTube video and go like, oh, maybe that's a good idea. It turns out it's not a good idea. I think he just had some ideas from his training
Right.
that he brought that wasn't necessarily as efficient as it should have been. Namely in the idea of overtraining. There was a lot of that.
Right.
He came from a school of thought that like more was better, harder is better, and did it work? Of course, right? You and I both know that if it's somebody who, especially if it's somebody who hasn't trained a lot,
Yeah.
you can get them to lift a rock,
Yeah.
a couple of times a day, and they're going to get quote unquote stronger, right? And that's kind of, I think, my first introduction to training, but first introduction, I would say to inefficient training, right? So yeah, to answer your question earlier, though, I think the main source of my understanding and my perspective on training methodology nowadays, like at 40, is actually from some bad experiences that I picked up, and I've vowed that I would never ever, under my watch anyway, allow anybody to ever do that again or to experience that again. So
Would you, when you say they're bad experiences, obviously like there needs to be an intersection, something needs to happen for you then to realize that something is bad, right? Because I'm assuming when you first started working with your coach and he or she is telling you that this is the way you're going to do it, you're thinking that sounds great. And then something happens and then there's a reflection point, which you then look back and you think, oh, actually, maybe that wasn't the best thing. So were these learnings like your own experiences? Was there like injury? Was there like burnout? Was there, you're like nodding your head, so it's kind of like all of the above?
all of the above, and probably some more too, right? So to give you an example, like for my track career, if you want to call it that, it was ended pretty early, around the age of 16, because I ended up developing an overuse injury. It was Achilles tendonitis in my left foot and some minor stress fractures in my right shin. And that was simply from the accumulative effects of just again, that antiquated mentality of more is better.
Yeah.
Right. Let's go harder, or whatever. Right.
Pain is not a thing.
Pain is not a thing. Right. So
yeah.
Those are lessons that I've acquired, and you know what, we can talk about this, and I promise you I'm not being like toxically positive, but I'm grateful for those experiences, because it's taught me what bad training is, if that makes any sense.
I think also, like, I don't know if you feel the same way, but that grittiness and the ability to like dig through pain, whilst it's not sustainable in the long term, I think it develops a lot of character.
Sure.
And I think it's an important trait for, I think, a lot of gritty people who have high levels of resilience have that kind of level of grittiness, right? And I think it can come from different sources. But I think like coaches for people in like the sporting world are often like a very early influence. Parents for sure, for me, never say die, never say quit type attitudes. Okay, got it.
Yeah, I'm sure like you being in, the rugby world, especially back in the day,
For sure.
there was a lot of that, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And there, like you said, there's some good that came out of that, but it doesn't, in my perspective now, it doesn't always have to be like that. That's what I'm saying. So
I want to kind of talk about the military.
Sure.
the time in your life where you served in the military,
Mhm.
there's multiple parts of this that I'm really interested in learning about, and I'm very excited about this conversation is because a lot of the stuff I've been waiting for this podcast to ask you to learn about your stories.
Okay.
But I think there's two parts. There's number one, maybe not number one, but I want to learn about the influence of your time in the military, specifically being stationed in Afghan, and how that's infiltrated your fitness, and I think potentially brought you to things like CrossFit, but then also just I want to learn about your experiences and what that was like. So maybe let's start there. Why did you decide to enroll in the military?
Yeah. For those that don't know, Ed asks very difficult and insightful questions, and this is one of them.
The podcast listeners know.
Yes, I know. And listening. Yeah, it's a good question. I think where it deeply stemmed from was truly there was a period in my life that I was pretty directionless, right? From without getting into too much detail, but from a certain point of my adolescent years, my dad was pretty absent, and there was a lot of kind of chaos in my life, and I didn't really, as a young teenager, I didn't really know how to kind of process all that, right?
Yeah.
And that started to accumulate into my later teenage years. When I was about 18 is when I finally decided that what I was doing was just not the answer. And I don't know what the answer is, but I know that the military would give me some kind of answer.
Sorry. How does an 18-year-old come to that conclusion? Was there someone who was a mentor? Were you inspired by seeing someone else make that transition? Because, as an 18-year-old, to have that level of self-awareness to say, I'm not happy with what I'm doing, I need to make a change. I mean, I can certainly speak from my own experiences. That came probably a lot later in my life.
Yeah. If I had to be completely honest, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know where that came from. It was just there was a moment in my life, and I don't know if it's because me experiencing so much chaos so early on in my life, and learning that especially because I'm kind of the oldest kid. I am the oldest kid in the family. I think there was also a lot of at the time I didn't understand it, but I think there was a lot of unsaid responsibility and pressure put on my shoulders that I could feel.
Yeah.
I felt like I had to anchor the family. I felt like I felt like I had to know what the answer was, and even if I didn't know, I'm going to pretend like I do know. And I think from those early on experiences, eventually there was so much trial and error that I just personally, honestly, and again, I still don't have a tangible answer for you, but I think at the moment, I just felt like the military would give me some kind of answer. Now, we can debate whether or not those answers are correct, but I was just looking for something.
In hindsight, were they?
That's a tough question. That's an even tougher question than the original one. I think there's a lot of philosophical and moral debates that we can open up when it comes to the military. What I'll do is I'll just compartmentalize it to me as a person. The answer is yes. I think it's developed me into a person that has direction. Again, I may not necessarily always have the answers, but I am no longer scared when I don't have the answers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a much more stable place to be emotionally, I think. So I think to answer your question, that was where my initial want to join the military came from. Now, there were a lot of other pragmatic reasons as well. The military would reimburse me for my education, right? So that was nice. It also served as a part-time job. At the time, it was sold to me in a very exciting kind of way, and there were some components of it that was very exciting. So there was a lot of different superficial kind of elements to it as well. I'm not going to lie, but I think looking back at it, deeply rooted, I was looking for a sense of direction. So.
And when you joined the military, is there a specific aspect or area within the military that you wanted to go into, or were you just I'm just going to go with the wind and see where it takes me?
Yeah, listen, everybody that joins the military wants to be a sniper, right? Everybody.
Is that true?
It's 100% true.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Is that because of what would the movies been back in the day?
Yeah.
I think Black Hawk Down. Is that
Black Hawk Down or Saving Private Ryan, that era.
The legends.
Right? Yeah, it was kind of not so different than the era where Top Gun came out.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you see the recruitment for Air Force.
Yeah. That was actually, did I not hear that that was actually like a government political ploy? Like, I think they funded, that could be completely wrong. I think I read about this somewhere, but the government actually funded the production of Top Gun to get people to want to be a part of the military.
Is that right?
Something along those lines.
I wouldn't surprise me. I don't have enough information there to speculate on that, but I mean, listen,
it would make sense if it did.
For sure.
And it was a great move.
The amount of high fives in that movie, man.
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me that it was propaganda, right? But for sure, right? Like I think, you know, I think maybe we now a little bit older, we can see it, but for sure a lot of decisions, and my decision as well, was influenced by some of that, you know, watching one too many war movies.
The heroes,
yeah, for sure, right? But to answer your question, when I first went in, I thought I was going to be a sniper. I was like, I'm going to be a sniper all the way, and et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, I didn't end up too far off that. I ended up in the combat arms. So in the Canadian military, and I don't know how the world's other militaries organize themselves, but there are like combat trades and then non-combat trades, right? So like a combat trade would be infantryman or like artilleryman or like you're driving a tank. Non-combat trades would be things like logistical support, intelligence, those, et cetera, right? So I ended up in the combat trades as an artillery soldier, and that's how my career started off.
And where did that career go? What experiences did you have in your time for the military? I believe military, you retired in 2010, was it?
2010, yeah.
So I think you joined in 2007.
2007, yeah, 2000, maybe even before that, 2006, maybe.
What did that 3 years look like?
So sorry, I should correct myself. So 2007 is when I deployed to Afghanistan.
Okay, yeah.
So I joined in 2004.
Gotcha.
2004.
So 6 years in the military.
Yes, 6 years.
Awesome.
Yeah. Sorry, what's the original question?
So I think what I would love to know about is that time in Afghanistan.
Okay, sure.
And was that something that, obviously when you joined in 2004, that maybe wasn't, you know, the idea of going to Afghanistan wasn't on the cards. And I guess there's something that materialized during your time and suddenly like, this is the thing and you're getting on a plane, and what must have that been like?
Yeah, it was a pretty like daunting time. Now I think at the time there was actually a wind at my back that kind of helped me. As ironic as I'll say, is that again, because that was like my period of searching for direction, I realized that there was nothing here for me at home anyway. So what's the worst that could happen? I know that sounds fucking crazy to say, but there was like, for me anyway, in my brain at the time, I was like, there's more knowledge for me over there than there is at home. So the original idea for me, for joining the military was, like I said, all those things, you know, getting the reimbursement, et cetera, et cetera. You're right. I would have never fathomed me going, to Afghanistan in a warplane and, spending about a year and a bit there. Right. I think, like I said, I think there were some answers that I knew that were there waiting for me. I've always been a person that doesn't like to sit on the bench, right? So at the time, politically speaking, Canada was actually not in the region that I deployed to yet. Canada was still predominantly in Kabul, Afghanistan, and that period of the deployment was considered peacekeeping already. Right? It was when the demand, I think it was from NATO specifically, that asked for our help, the Canadian military, to deploy over to Kandahar region, is that when that mission became from peacekeeping to peacemaking, is what they call them, right?
Okay, got it.
That's what they for a little while called.
So peacemaking is in the process of going from battle to peace, and then peacekeeping is once the peace has been made, you're then maintaining it.
Yeah, peacemaking is just a nicer way to make it palatable for the public. Right. It's no longer a combat mission, et cetera. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I've never heard those terms. I'm just
okay. Yeah. And you'll see a distinct difference too, right? So as an example, like in peacekeeping operations, you'll see some very, very visually distinct differences. As an example, like when they go to do a peacekeeping operation, they wear like white helmets. They have like blue tanks. It's like we're here to just be the middleman. Okay. We're not here to conduct any military operations, right? When it comes to peacemaking, is when you start to see camouflage, when you start to see, as an example, the combat load that I had to carry, standard combat load was 300 rounds for my primary weapon, and then an additional 50 rounds for my side weapon, right? When you are in peacekeeping mode, that doesn't happen. Like I think everybody gets like 10 rounds or something like that, right?
Got it.
So anyways, that was the first transition from Kabul to Kandahar, and that's the first time that Canadians found themselves, in a long time anyway, in a combat mission or a peace-making operation. And so like I said, I'm not a guy that likes to sit on the bench. When I found out about that, I thought about it for about 3 months. I told, I think, 2 or 3 friends. They said I was fucking crazy, but I support you. And the most difficult person I had to talk to was, of course, my mom. I had to tell her that, listen, I need to do this. And she did not like that. But she eventually came around and supported me. And and I ripped myself off the bench and put myself in a plane and was in Kandahar, I think, late 2006.
Team, I want to quickly interrupt this episode to give a little shout out to our sponsors, Today Well Spent. This little journal has made such a massive, profound impact on my life since I started using it. When I started using it, I actually didn't know that it was backed by neuroscience, but now it totally makes sense. This has brought a ton of gratitude to my life. It keeps me on track and focused on the things I need to do day to day, and brings a lot of context as to how each day fits within the greater week and the greater month. So if you, like me, really care about trying to be a high performer and want to do everything you can to make that happen, I cannot recommend this journal enough. Use our discount code, THEPROCESS, to grab yours today. Okay, I'm trying to just envision being in your shoes at this point in time, and I'm thinking like expectation versus reality. So kind of like what you're thinking you're about to get into versus what you actually got into. Was there a difference?
Yeah, absolutely. If I have any like movies that I can reference for folks, I'll put it like this. There were pockets of experiences that kind of reflected what I would see on TV or what I had in my head, right? For sure. But the ratio of that was significantly lower than I had thought, right? I would say like maybe like 10% of the time we would run into quote unquote action, right? 90% of the time I would reference movies like Jarhead.
Right. So with the boys in the tent, getting a session in, like on guard ready, but
like things like that. Or like
so you were actually going in basically prepared to be doing the 10% like 90% of the time.
Was I prepared?
Is that what you were thinking? Were you thinking like the 10% of action was actually more than you thought you were going to do, or was it less than you thought you were going to do?
It's way less than I thought.
Way less, yeah. That's what I meant.
Way less. Right? Yeah. I thought I was gonna, be, just plowing through bullets like every 2 weeks or something like that, right? And like I said, those occurrences did happen, but it was like 10% of the whole deployment, right?
Yeah.
So, which, listen, by the way, I recognize that's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's a good thing, right? But your young, stupid 20-year-old brain,
you want the action,
right? So so like if I had to reference movies, it would be like Jarhead was a pretty good depiction of that. I found like the downtime. This movie called Hurt Locker, I don't know if you've watched that before. Now that took a lot of liberties from the operational side, but I do remember the parts where he comes home from deployment were pretty accurate. Right, like the kind of like not knowing how to communicate certain kind of experiences to like loved ones and family and whatever. I thought all that was very, very accurate. But so I think to answer your question, there was for sure a discrepancy between the experiences that I had and the experiences that I expected.
And what ultimately led you to, in fact, before I talk about that, fitness, like what does fitness look like when you're in deployment? And okay, we're saying that 10% of the time it's action.
Yeah.
Because I also envision, like, obviously, a lot of my roots are in CrossFit, and a lot of CrossFit's roots actually stem from the military.
Yeah.
And being a Hong Kong kid who's English, like, it's very hard to understand that because it's not embedded in my culture. I don't have friends who've served. Really, like, all my references are based on American movies. So, I think that's always something I've probably found quite or I've almost felt a bit detached with CrossFit in that sense. You know, when I go to the States and I walk into a CrossFit gym and, you know, the American flag's up and,
Yeah.
you know, everyone's doing Murph and there's this big, like, you know, attachment and celebration of the military. The version of CrossFit that I've always been involved in and seen in my bubble has never been had that military attachment. And it's always made it a little bit harder for me to get behind that stuff because I just can't relate to it. And it's not, I guess, you know, even from my nationality, it's just not a part of it. So where does CrossFit feature in, you know, when you're out there and you're stationed in Afghan, and like, what does training look like?
Yeah, it's an amazing question, and it's like it's a pretty insightful like analysis on CrossFit, its roots, and maybe the delineation of like the culture that is military in North America anyway, and how that automatically transfers into CrossFit, and maybe people on this side of the ocean don't see it as much, right? Which again is a good thing. I would say to first answer your question, exercising, and we've talked about this briefly, exercising and training while you're on deployment is a difficult task, right? You're limited for equipment. You're limited for nutrition.
That's always the thing I think about the most.
Oh.
You know, I see videos of people beating themselves. I'm like, surely they just don't have the calories to be supporting.
No.
And sorry to cut you off, but the movies and the photos are like, these guys are all jacked out of their minds and they're like, you know, beating themselves in the desert. And I'm thinking, how are they doing that? But sorry, continue.
No. And just to add to that, by the way, again, there's a discrepancy between movies and reality.
Yeah, of course.
If you take a look at a lot of the spec ops guys, like Rangers, you know, in Canada, we call them like JTF guys or Seesaw guys. They're not like, they don't look like guys on trend. You know, they don't look like they can bench, you know, 3 plates for reps, right?
Yeah.
These are guys that can just go forever. That's the main thing, right? And when those folks, when you see them train in the field, again, the idea of nutrition always falls into the background somewhere, right? And for them, a lot of times, and I'm sure we'll talk about this a little bit more, which is something I experienced in the military that I'm still grateful for, but I think it's got to be applied very, very carefully, which is the idea of training in scarcity, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of that like SF movement that advocates for that, and they actually purposely program it in there, right? They'll get you to do something extremely intense. So let's go for a 7-kilometer sprint after like sleep deprivation, like 2 days of sleep deprivation, right? Stuff like that, right? So on the topic of what we're talking about, their training and nutrition, etc., some of these SF guys or some of this very special, like specially kind of designated folks in the military will actually embrace that. They'll be like, I'm lacking nutrition. This is the time to train, right?
Yeah, right.
But
they're seeing it as like they want that adaptation almost.
Absolutely, right. Now, from a physiological standpoint, the adaptation is minimal.
Yeah.
Where it comes into play is the mental fortitude.
Yeah, the
right?
mentalness. Yeah.
Like you and I have both trained on a day where maybe we didn't eat as much, or eat enough, and you know the way that you feel, right?
Yeah.
But some guys want that because operationally it's required.
Yeah,
right?
and it's specificity to what they need.
Absolutely. But back to what we're talking about, and just like general capacity, training is difficult because equipment's limited, time is limited, your energy is limited, your nutrition is limited, a bunch of things is limited. So you have to get really creative. You know, a lot of times learning how to manipulate weight, as an example, or resistance becomes king.
Like moment arms and
exactly, right?
Nice.
Exactly. Or
I love that stuff.
We've done that before where we just hit the repetitions. Like we just hit 5 sets of 20 or 4 sets of 20 or whatever we did. No
or whatever
reps.
load you got. Yeah.
Right. It's the idea is to get that stimulus there, right? But to be smart about it, you also have to balance it out with like that rest. You have to like be smart about, hey, listen, I haven't slept in 2 days here. Maybe I should just forget that last set, or you know what I mean? So stuff like that. So I would say training in the field looks like that. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
And what do you have like? I'm trying to envision what you actually have on site. Like, are you staying in a tent? Is this like, are you staying in corrugated iron houses? Is it like a nice brick house? Have you got a gym, or is this literally like, I'm pitching a barbell in a dusty plot of land with maybe a pull-up bar? Like, what are we saying here?
Yeah, just All of the above.
All the above.
All of the above. When it comes to Afghanistan, your experiences may differ, right? It's like some people can go to Afghanistan and listen. Like to me, everybody's contribution was just as important.
Yeah.
But there are certainly sentiments in the military where they go like, when you went to Afghanistan, were you outside the wire or inside the wire?
Okay.
Because that makes a difference in the quality of your life, right? If you're inside the wire, for a lot of people, they basically see it as a vacation.
Right.
Right. I don't know if you've heard much about.
No, I never heard that.
So they, inside the wire basically means like when you're in Kandahar anyway, inside the Kandahar airfield.
Right. Okay. So you're in the safe zone.
Safe zone.
Air conditioned rooms.
Exactly. Right. Like trailers.
Yeah.
They at one point they brought in Burger King. Like Burger King was in the place. I don't know if you know Tim Hortons at all.
Yeah.
So they had Tim Hortons in Kandahar airfield. They even brought the Stanley Cup to Kandahar airfield for some of the troops to kind of like. So it's a good go. Quality of life is there. You get fresh food every single day. So when it comes to the gym facilities, you can bet that being inside the wire, you're good. Right?
Yeah,
you're good. For me, a lot of my deployment, because I was part of Combat Arms, was outside the wire. I would say 95% of it was outside the wire, living in a desert in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
I mean, like literally the middle of nowhere. So a lot of that would come down to, again, being creative with your equipment. Your vests. It's invaluable.
Is this why you love training with the vest?
I
so
love
much
training
now?
with the vest.
Just so you guys know, I've done weighted pull-ups with Jeff twice now, and both times I've been like, all right, Jeff, we're going to weight this. I'm going to build to whatever, heavy 5, heavy 3. And Jeff just goes, yep. And he just, next minute I turn around and Jeff's got a vest on and he just doing his pull-ups. But
I know.
love it.
Well, as Ed has also brought up, it is, with chest to bar, I don't have to go as far.
You have to go as far. It's genius.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, so like your vest, I don't think they designed it originally for weight, but with your ceramic plates in there, it's approximately 25 pounds.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to, you could throw on your, what we call a tactical vest, which goes on top of your body armor. That's where all your ammunition is, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously you got to be careful with it when you're exercising, but it does add quite a bit. I don't exactly remember what the weight load is, but I think you can probably end up with, I want to say you could probably end up with like 50 pounds on your back.
What is the most important like fitness quality that they're looking for someone who is serving outside the wire? So basically what you were doing, like you said, is endurance the most important thing? And in which case, like how long are they wanting you to go? Like how important is strength? I'm interested to know like what their benchmarks are for what what does a fittest soldier need to be able to do?
Yeah. If I had to pick one kind of attribute, I think it would be probably like endurance.
Like the ability to just keep on moving on your feet with load on you.
Yeah, whether it's cardiorespiratory or muscular endurance, some kind of endurance.
Yeah.
Right. I think there are specific jobs. So as an example, in the artillery, do you know much about the artillery and how it works?
Not really.
Okay.
Bits and bobs.
Okay. So basically the artillery is responsible for heavy firepower, right?
Yeah.
So like basically whenever you're on operation, if you wanted a certain area or a certain building just leveled, you would call in, basically you would have somebody attached to your unit known as the forward observers. And the forward observers would you would tell me, hey, Jeff, I need that grid square leveled.
Yeah.
What I need. And because I'm the expert, I'm like, okay, I know exactly what you need, and I'll do a bunch of stuff. And then the artillery, or maybe the jets would come in, maybe helicopters would come in, whatever, and do their thing, right? Now on the artillery gun line in Afghanistan, we use these machines called the M777 howitzers. These machines are capable of firing up to 20 kilometers, like accurate.
Wow.
20 kilometers. And when they say accurate, they mean like a 10 meter by 10 meter window, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty accurate.
And what are they firing like?
Yeah, and that's what I was about to get into. So the warheads that they fire are 100 pounds each, right?
Wow.
And you have to be able to manually lift them to about chest height to load it onto the tray, and then the tray loads it into the machine. So to answer your original question, endurance is king, I think, out there. But on specific tasks, like
these guys need to deadlift 100-pound objects over and over and over again.
Oh yeah, like especially when you have the forward team asking, like maybe it's like a very imminent mission, they might ask for like So they might order something like this over the radio. They go, yeah, 20 rounds fire for effect, which basically means that if you have two guns, two howitzers, each gun has to fire 20 rounds, which means that whoever's loading better be able to lift, basically do a clean 100 pounds 20 times in a matter of like basically as soon as you can, right?
Right. So the fitness is very specific.
Very specific in certain tasks, right? And you can find examples of this like all through the military. So
nice.
Yeah.
So those guys have got jacked up lower erectors and massive asses.
Yeah, good booty. Yeah. It's a good booty. Yeah.
So, okay, Jeff, why does this journey end for you in 2010? Why do you decide to not? What happened that led you to stop being a part of the military?
It is something that I still question today. I think in the military is like, you can blame it on whatever. You can blame it on the adrenaline, maybe the dopamine, maybe whatever it might be. I still miss it to this very day. I think it was a very difficult departure for me, but it was a rational one. It was one that I've seen, enough examples where, a guy, a sergeant major, respected in the military, been on for 20 years, multiple combat tours, et cetera, all these like distinguished qualifications, but, no personal life, right? The fucking both knees shot out, broken back, some kind of depression. Do you know what I mean? There was so much of it that when I saw from the outside, I was like, I don't want to be that.
So you had some foresight to say before it got to that point.
Yeah, for sure.
That's hard.
For sure. But emotionally, I was
a hard decision to make.
Absolutely.
When you're not actually being forced to necessarily make that change.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was like I said, even to this day, I still think about, the kind of like the experiences that I've had in the military, and I miss it.
And what specifically the things that you miss? What are the things that you miss?
For sure, like I said, that kind of like adrenaline. I don't know if I'm naturally built this way, but I'm I guess a bit of a nomad, right?
I can tell that.
Right. Yeah. So like
I think your ability just to basically pack up and leave and come over here at the age of 40 and just slot in so easily. I think is testament to that nomadic side to you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's some really cool sides about that, but there's also some like difficult sides about,
I can imagine,
being a nomad as well. Right. But from the standpoint of, what I miss about the military, for sure, that lifestyle was kind of interesting to me, right? Being able to like see different parts of the world, do different things all the time, meet different people, experience different things. The camaraderie in the military, I don't think I've experienced it anywhere else. And again, for someone
on the training floor at Coastal Fitness,
not yet.
Okay.
Maybe if we deploy to a peacemaking operation, cool. We'll see that. Yeah. But I think, especially for someone that at a young age struggled with like shyness, it was like a big thing for me, right? Like, I don't know if it was just because, generally speaking, the people that join the military are weird to start off with. Everybody just bathed in their weirdness. They're just kind of like, I'm weird, you're weird. Let's just fucking hang out, right? Let's just do this thing, and you're my family, right? And I didn't get a lot of that. I think when I was young, I was a bit of a loner, so that was really, really important to me. I miss that a lot, and I think ultimately the skill acquisition, right? I don't think anywhere else has provided me the environment where it was like almost meditative, right? It was like, this is your job now. You're going to learn this, and you're going to learn it good. And that's all you did. And you just learn. You just did whatever the skill might be, whether it's taking apart your rifle, whether it is loading that 100-pound warhead onto a tray, or whether it is doing reconnaissance, doing map work, etc. Right? There was a lot about it that was about high skill acquisition that allowed my brain anyway, to really focus and be meditative, and that's big for me personally. So those are the things that I kind of miss. So.
Okay, where does life take you after the military? So you kind of pivot into something kind of similar-ish. So talk me through your time with the fire department.
Yeah. So where the fire department falls is after I came home from Afghanistan, there was a period for sure where I was kind of like, okay, like what do I do now? And that's when I started to pursue a little bit of education in sports science. And then the fire department picked me up in 2010.
So when you say picked you up, like they headhunted you,
No.
Right.
So
you apply.
you have to compete
Right,
for the
got it.
spot, etc. And I think the reason why I use the word pickup is because traditionally in North America, the fire department is a pretty competitive field. I don't know how it is in Asia here.
Yeah.
But I get to give you an example. When I wrote for my position with Mississauga Fire, that's the township that I work for, the city that I work for, there was 4,000 people that wrote the initial aptitude exam, and they were hiring 16 slots, right?
Wow.
So it's pretty competitive, right?
And what do you think you have that separated you from the other 4,000 that got you that role?
I think for sure the experience from the military, like especially Afghanistan and that developed a lot of confidence in my ability to handle bad situations. It was almost like to the point where I was like starting to think it was maybe unhealthy, like how detached I can be when it comes to bad situations. So I think that gave me a lot of like confidence in my ability to be able to like handle like, you know, fires and rescues and etc. At the time, my level of fitness, I would say, was peak for me. That's when I was training for the fire department, and that's when I really was like at the peak of doing CrossFit.
And was CrossFit your main methodology for your fitness?
It was, at the time it was.
Yeah.
Right. So it was mainly, you know, Metcons GPP.
Yeah.
And I specialized in doing VO2 maxes because that's what the fire department required.
Right.
So I think I counted, I'm sure you've done a VO2 max test
Yeah.
before. They're painful.
Yeah.
I think at that point I had done 11 VO2 max tests.
That's rough.
It was rough. Right. But I got really good at it.
Yeah.
Right? So, so that was my main training. Like I said, it would be like GPP, Metcon, in the CrossFit kind of brand. And then I would supplement that with a lot of zone 4, zone 5 training.
Hard conditioning work.
Yeah. So
awesome.
So yeah, at the time my fitness was at my peak. So that added to my ability. And I just thought that overall I was somebody who could have contributed and made a difference in the fire service. So I think all those three things kind of combined to made me a confident applicant.
And then the same question I asked with the military, like when you went to the military, you wanted to be a sniper. Entering the fire department, did you have a role or something specifically that you could envision yourself doing?
Yeah. I think by then I probably like got some of that out of my system.
Yeah.
But I do recall thinking to myself that I wanted to be on what's called a tech rescue team. So technical rescue being any type of like specialized rescue, right? Whether that's
like diving and stuff.
Not quite diving.
It's terrifying.
Diving is, yeah.
Just the idea of when I see like fire rescue doing, and I guess fire rescue probably doesn't happen underwater.
I guess
it's rescue team. I mean, a fire under the ocean is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, that's just my own fears. But yeah, continue. Sorry. Yeah. So specialty fire rescue.
Yeah. So specialty rescue. So like, I mean, diving could conceivably be part of that, but where I worked, I mean, ice water rescue is a thing, but less so like diving, I would say.
Yeah.
Where I worked, there was a lot of like high angle rescue. So like rope stuff, right? So like learning how to set up belay systems and haul systems to, as an example, save like window washers that are stuck.
Right.
Stuff like that. Or like trench rescue. Machine rescue is a big one in the area that I worked in. It was a lot of industrial kind of accidents where people, it's not nice. I've been to a couple of those and didn't want to have spaghetti for a couple of months at least, right? So that stuff would be considered technical rescue. And I remember when I first got on, I was like, I think that's something that interests me. So,
and is that where you went?
It was. So, without getting into the details of how things are stratified in the fire department, I ended up on a squad. When I got promoted to a squad position, which is it's like a conventional fire engine, right? You still do the firefighting and etc., but there's additional tools on there for specialty rescues, right? Beyond the squad, there's actually like a dedicated rescue truck, and on there's actually like no water. It's not a fire truck anymore. It's just like a big toolbox that has
everything you might possibly need.
Exactly, like all the specialty tools, right? New York is very, very famous for that. If you're into like the fire culture or whatever, it's like almost like a bit of a celebrity status. If you go to like FDNY and you go visit Rescue One, that's like people go to see that truck all the time, right? So that's kind of where I ended up.
You're like a real man.
I'm not.
Yeah. Us Hong Kong kids,
Nope.
we're like spoon fed, can't really, couldn't change a light bulb type thing. You're out there like, cutting people out of pieces of machinery and
Yeah.
putting out fires and, serving your country. Pretty damn inspired.
Listen, I don't see it like that. I think I've told this to you already. I've admitted this to you and Tammy. I'm like a softie inside. Like I'm no, by no means a quote unquote real man, right?
You are soft, yes, but you're still more manly than me, and that's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, I'm a soft man.
You're a
I'm
soft man.
soft
Yeah,
man,
yeah. I'm a soft child, but you're a soft man.
Yeah.
So why does that end in 2020? I
Mhm.
think is where you finished your time in the fire department. Is that right? Were you with them for 10 years?
No, not quite. So 2020 is when I got promoted.
Ah, that's right.
Yeah. So 2025 is when well, 2024 is actually when I first met you. Is that
Yeah.
correct? Yeah. And that was like during my travels here in Hong Kong. As you know, one of the main reasons, obviously coming to join this team is a big part of my decision making process. But the other portion of it that kind of initiated this was my grandma's not doing too well. She's getting, a little bit sick. So I thought I would be able to take some time and help her out with getting around, getting an appointment, and et cetera, et cetera. There was many different like modalities on how I would execute that. It looks like where I ended up was, basically taking on a job with you guys here while, hopefully being able to be there for my grandmother when she needs me. Right. So it's a multitude of factors as to why I ended up here, away from the fire department and here in your organization. But those would be the two main ones, I would say.
I want to turn and talk about coaching, like Jeff the coach.
Sure.
Because your coaching journey, actually, I think everything we've been talking about sounds like, you've just been serving in the military and then you did fire department stuff and suddenly now you're a coach. But actually your coaching background goes back quite a way.
Yeah.
I think 2008 was when you first started coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you start coaching?
Yeah. And, just to clarify that, I think a lot of that also falls in like this weird cultural thing. And I've asked you this many times too, Ed, and it's like, is it actually like a thing here in Hong Kong where people coach full time? And you go, absolutely, right? Absolutely. In Canada, it's less so a thing.
Yeah.
A coaching PT is more of a a part-time endeavor for lots.
Yeah.
Where I see a lot of CrossFit trainers is actually first responders, right? So like cops, fire, paramedics, military
part-time
guys
work type
doing
thing.
part-time work, right? So where the all of a sudden comes in is actually in the fact that I've been a coach part-time since 2008. I think where it first started off, honestly, was just trying to share the idea of CrossFit.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you and I have both discussed what CrossFit is nowadays. It's certainly different. It certainly is a controversial topic nowadays. At the time, CrossFit was basically the Bible to me, right? And I think it was like that because I was in the military, right? It was something that changed the way that I operated. It changed my fitness in a way that I'd never imagined, right? Matter of fact, is the first time I did CrossFit was in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
What
was the first workout?
The first workout, I can't quite remember. I remember it had like dumbbell push presses, and it had burpees. So already those are not pleasant.
Yeah.
I can't remember quite exactly what the workout was, but what I do remember was at the time I was a typical bodybuilder kind of, because that's what you thought fitness was, right? I mean, I can bench 3 plates for reps, I can back squat 4 plates, but I couldn't run a mile without going to the hospital, right?
Yeah.
And I had remembered after going to Afghanistan, going on a couple operations and not doing well, like just not performing the way that I thought I was.
And was fitness the reason you didn't perform?
Fitness was part of the reason. Also there was environmental ones, the heat, the altitude. Afghanistan's way higher than sea level, right? There's a bunch of reasons that really woke me up to that. And the first time I did my first CrossFit workout was back inside the wire when we went back in for a resupply, and I visited the wrong gym. Actually, it was a gym that was meant for SF guys, because SF guys have their own bunker and whatever.
Yeah.
Just walked in and I saw some of the fittest people I've ever seen in my life, like on the ground, just not doing well. And I had to ask, I'm like, well, what are you guys doing in here? And they introduced me to this concept of high intensity circuit training, what was at the time known as CrossFit, right?
Yeah.
So I remember starting that journey and doing that. And after the fact, I remember just coming back home and realizing that not a lot of people knew about this. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was like something like, it was like I got some knowledge that nobody knew about, right? And at the time, CrossFit Level 1 was being offered in Toronto. I was like, I'm gonna jump on this, and it was, I don't know if you remember these names, but like Pat Sherwood, and yeah. So those folks,
And is that why you follow
Lynchpin?
Lynchpin?
Yeah,
Yeah, because he was your level 1 guy.
Yeah.
My level 1 guy was what's his name? Berger. Russell Berger.
Russell Berger, yeah. Okay.
Who ended up like saying something super controversial like 5 or 6 years later.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he was my guy.
Yeah. Listen. Yeah. We know the CrossFit bunch. Okay. They're gonna say some crazy stuff. I'm not justifying it, but we all saw it, right? But anyways, I think the journey of coaching started off when I wanted to just share something that I thought was like so valuable to me.
Something that impacted your life.
Absolutely. Like, I was not a coach at all. Like, I was just like, hey, Ed, just do this for a bit and then do this for a little bit. And then, yeah, good. Right. And then that was my coaching, right? I was not a coach, right?
No.
But then obviously as time progressed, I picked up more skills on how to communicate the language of fitness to people. So,
and what about now, Jeff, like your coaching practice and the people that you want to work with and people you want to serve and the message you want to deliver? What is that?
Yeah. This is something that I'll take, I'll despite his controversy, I will fully give credit to Greg Glassman.
Yeah.
Again, a very difficult
genius.
Yeah, a very difficult person to palate for sure.
Yeah.
But he does have some ideas that I will admittedly say I can't argue with, right? One of the things that he brought up, and I think it was more prominent in North America, was this idea of an occupational athlete, right? He recognized that there were people in society that weren't athletes, but they needed athletic ability, right?
Yeah.
And that was necessarily there's police or fire and et cetera, those bunch, right? And that's what you were referring to earlier, where CrossFit came from a military style, whatever, right? And as that kind of concept progressed, both myself and I think even CrossFit recognized that, listen, there's also a bunch of people between occupational athletes and just people.
Yeah.
Right? And you could even include the quote unquote people in there, right? And the example that oftentimes is used is like, you may not necessarily have to do a 100-meter dash in sub 10, but you're going to have to chase after a bus.
Yeah.
You're going to have to run after your kids. You're going to have to be able to run, or you're going to have to be able to have some kind of anaerobic capacity, right? You may not necessarily have to snatch, 225 pounds and put it over your head, but you're going to have pick up something off the ground and put it up on a shelf, et cetera, et cetera. We've all heard those sentences, right? And those things have almost always still, like to this very day, still made a lot of sense to me. In the way that the people I serve, I think it's everyone and anyone that wants a better life to me. Right. And I take those athletic endeavors that I might have. I take all those lessons that I've learned. I take, those methodologies that seemingly might only apply to athletes, and I just scale them back down to a place where it's appropriate for everyday people. I think a better life should not be exclusive to athletes. A better life should be accessible and available to everybody. And I think, I don't know if you agree with me, but it's our job as a coach to make that happen, right? So I would say that's kind of like the people that I serve and the mission that I have for fitness. So
yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
No, and I'm really looking forward to seeing your journey unfold here. I think I can see that in your own methodology and the way that you train yourself and the way that you look after yourself. And I think the beauty is that you have all this background and experience and different methodologies and different experiences, and you're able to now culminate the things that you have learned along that journey to basically deliver it and have so many tools to kind of draw on, which is, one of the things that I'll be forever grateful for CrossFit for is just the breadth of movement and qualities of strength and fitness that it has forced me to not only try and conquer myself, but also just learn about and understand from like a methodology standpoint. And now I just have, this amazing toolbox of so many things that I can draw on for, whether it's a high level athlete or it's my mum,
sure,
who just wants to live long and prosper.
Yeah, for sure. And we've had these conversations multitude of times. Matter of fact, just kind of yesterday, right? Like there are some things that are just applicable to people. As an example, a snatch, it's a very athletic movement, but it doesn't have to be applicable to everybody. And like I said, it's our job as coaches to look through the matrix and go, this is what I'm going to pick.
Yeah.
And this is what is going to be appropriate to you, and it's going to make your life better, right? And I think hopefully here at Coastal, I'm able to do that, right? And I'm fully confident that I will, because I'm honestly, like, I don't say this enough, but I mean it when I say that I'm grateful that I landed here. You and Tammy and the whole gang have been a really amazing resource for me to draw from, whether it is motivating my own fitness or getting ideas as to like how I could train this person or how I could train this person, right? So I'm, as a coach, aside from bringing my own toolbox here, I think Coastal has helped me a lot in the way of, preparing myself for the clientele here. So
love it.
Yeah.
Jeff, we have a closing tradition on this podcast, which you don't know about, but it's easy.
Okay.
So the question is
burpees.
No, the question is, no, I'm not going to make you do burpees on the white sofa, mate. My question to you is, if you could describe your perfect day, what would it look like?
My perfect day. I think in this moment in time, the morning would start off with a good workout.
First thing, fasted, no food in your belly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I don't recommend this, but fasted. I don't know why I work better when I'm fasted. Okay.
You can make that. You can adapt to it.
Yeah. So fasted, and then following that, good coffee with some good food, maybe brunch or something like that. And then for me anyway, a nice visit to my grandma. Say hi. As some of you folks here know already, my grandma's crushing me in chess. So maybe I'll get humbled a little bit there.
So in your dream day, you're not beating your grandma?
No,
you're still gonna let her win?
Not even close.
Nice.
Yeah, not even close. The afternoon would probably be spent like reading or something like that. I love acquiring knowledge. And in the afternoon, if I could spend dinner with some more loved ones and family, developing relationships, that's like super important to me now at the age of 40. I'll be honest, there was a time in my life where I didn't care about relationships.
Yeah.
I was kind of like, I got goals, I got ambitions, and etc. But at the age of 40, I've realized the importance of human connection, the importance of relationships. So like I said, if I could finish off the night with a good dinner, maybe a couple glasses of wine with some good friends, I'd be okay. I'd be okay with that. I'm a simple dude.
Love it.
Yeah.
Jeff, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed, we've only really known each other for a couple of weeks since you've been here.
Yes, sir.
But it's been awesome. It kind of feels like you've been here for a really long time already, which is a really good sign.
I'm not overwhelming my stay, am I?
You absolutely are not. And I'm looking forward to our future together. And thank you for coming on the podcast and sharing your story so openly and honestly.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Always a pleasure. So
before we say goodbye, here's one crazy statistic for you. Did you know that almost 40% of people who listen to the show don't actually subscribe to it? Now, I didn't think that was a big deal until I actually learned about the power of hitting subscribe. For you, the listener, you get to stay up to date when we drop episodes on a weekly basis. But for us as a podcast, it really helps our visibility and helps us attract great brands and great listeners to help grow this podcast. So if you enjoyed this episode or you're a big fan of the show, please do us a massive favor and hit subscribe. Thank you so much.